Thanks, everyone. My name is Emily Ma. I just landed Sydney this morning, 6:30 a.m. So great to be here. I didn't expect the weather is like this. I was thinking, coming from China, I was expecting blue sky, but I'm quite lucky that I've been to Sydney 3 times. This is my first time to experience the smoky. Anyway, let's get started. I have a presentation, but I don't want to spend too much time on that, so I will quickly go through that. I want to spend more time to discuss with you guys about what's happening in China and how we can support you. So overview and why China. I think these numbers are not new to you. China has 1.4 billion population. More than 8 million internet users and more than 800 million mobile net users, 500 million mobile payment users. All these numbers seems to be great. I think the Australian companies who I talk to, when they see these numbers, they always get very excited. But I also encountered companies who have this perception of China. First, China is a massive market with massive opportunities, very easy to make money. Is that true? It's actually a very difficult market because the scale about it and also the complexity about the market. You will have lots of opportunities, but you also face fierce competition in the market. Secondly, the culture is very different from between Australia and China. How people do business in China is totally different in Australia. Second perception, my IP will be easily stolen in China. Is that true? What do you think? According to a report launched by World Bank Group, 84% of foreign business suited Chinese business about IP issue in China. They win the lawsuit. But in the US, the percentage is about 20-something. The reason why I point this is that IP issue is not only in China, it's a worldwide thing. If you don't have a strategy to protect your IP, you expose yourself to IP risk. And it can happen in any country, not only in China. I'll talk a little bit more about IP protection later, but the third perception I often hear Australian companies say is that I don't have competitor. My product, my technology is the best. It's almost impossible. If you do enough market research, if you do enough homework, you will often find you do have competitors. They might be in China or might be in Australia, might be in US. If someone tell me, okay, I don't have a competitor, I always doubt it. Next one, I only want to work with big Chinese companies because they are most powerful and I will get more opportunities. I don't believe it. You may get opportunities from the big Chinese companies only if your business, your product is strong enough. It may not be the best thing for you to work with giant companies because they don't pay enough attention to you. There are so many companies who want to work with, become their partners, then they will be very selective and they will be very strict in terms of what they want to get back from you. So when you think about who you want to work with, don't just stare at the first-tier companies, but look at the other companies because China is a huge market. There are many companies other than Alibaba, other than Tencent. Next one, I should set up my business in first-tier cities. When I say first-tier cities, it's big cities like Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai. True or not? Maybe yes, maybe no. The reason why I say that is There are definitely many opportunities exist in the first-tier cities. However, it's also very competitive. It's also challenging. It's very expensive to run business in these cities. If you start a business, you want to hire, for example, a sales manager. Average sales manager with about 5-7 years experience, you will end up pay a salary and cost and allowance everything about 100K Australian dollars per year. And adding on that, it's also very, in China, it's quite hard if you want to fire someone. So these are the issues you will be facing. But on the other side, there are actually more and more opportunities in the lower tier cities. One thing is because the local government is very aggressively attracting foreign business, and they will provide more incentive to the foreign startups, including investment, including some other incentive schemes such as allowance, tax reduction. So you may need to think about where you want to locate your business. And I think the key factor you also need to think about, where are your customers? So you definitely want to be close to your customers. So if you're doing fintech, then probably Shanghai is a good place for you to be. But if you're doing something like hardware, then probably you need to consider to go to Shenzhen. Think about China as a very diversified market, not just one market. Next one, I need to set up an entity in China to do business. Not necessarily. You will need to set up an entity in China only if, first, you want to hire people in China. You need to pay salary. You need to sign contract. And then secondly, you need to issue invoice to your customers. What if you don't set up an entity in China? Can you still do business? Yes. There are service providers available in China who can provide such service to arrange contract on behalf of you, and also even provide logistics support. There are even service providers who can hire staff on behalf of you. So just be mindful about the service available before you trying to set up an entity in China. Last one, it's cheap to run business in China. I think I have covered earlier. It's not as that cheap as some people have expected. If you go back to 10 years ago, maybe China is a cheap place. Labor cost is relatively low. And now, if you go to Shanghai, you will find that the living expenses is similar to Australia, to Sydney. Yeah, so this is one thing you also need to be aware of. Regional outlook. So China, one thing China is trying to do is to gathering the cities to become city clusters. The purpose of that is to increase the investment opportunities and information sharing between different cities. So there are 4 major regions. East China, I highlighted 3 cities and provinces which are the key ones in East China region. Shanghai is definitely the innovation hub, center of finance, and also regional headquarters of lots of big companies. It's also the place where China set up the first free trade zone. Overall, in Shanghai, people have high level of English proficiency. So if you go to Shanghai, you'll find it's quite easy for foreigners to settle down. There's a relatively big foreigner community where you will find that, okay, you can actually very easily to adapt into the local culture. Zhejiang is the headquarters of Alibaba. The province is full of rich entrepreneurs, and also they have well-developed e-commerce ecosystem. So if you are in the e-commerce business, you might consider to go to set up your business in Zhejiang, in Hangzhou. Jiangsu is a province which is very close to Shanghai. It's about between 1 hour to 2 hours by fast train. And they are more manufacturing based, and also lots of good universities. And you will find that you can find very good R&D resources, students in that region. Chengdu and West China. Chengdu has been developing really fast in the recent years. One of the reasons is because the government has been pushing really, really hard to set up its own ecosystem. And we have an Australian company called Clear set up their branch in Chengdu, which is very, very successful. And they have got a very strong government support to develop their business in Chengdu. So compared with Shanghai and Chengdu, Chengdu is relatively less developed and less internationalized compared with Shanghai. However, the cost of living and labor cost is relatively low. And also you will get more support from the government in Shanghai because there are so many foreign companies already, then the government will not care about small business. Shenzhen and South China, which is also the Greater Bay Area located. Shenzhen has been well known about its hardware ecosystem. So if you are doing something like related to hardware, you will find hardware accelerators where you can, prototype your products easily, and you will easily find, manufacturers, suppliers in that ecosystem. Next thing, I want to talk a little bit about raising money in China for Australian business, for foreign business in general. You might not be able to see, but sorry, there's something wrong about the text, but these slides talk about IP issue. Foreign companies have high win rates in IP enforcement in China, as I mentioned earlier. And you can actually protect your trademarks, your patent, your code source, and your trade secret if you register properly. And the cost for registering that business is actually quite low. Averagely, you can do it by between like 1,000 to 2,000 Australian dollars for registering your trademark. You can easily find the IP expert in China who have expertise to help you register that business. And just for information, China is first to register a market. So if you are thinking about coming to China, then I would suggest you to register as soon as possible. Raising money in China. So how the Chinese VCs are different from the US ones. First, the funding source is a little bit different. In the US, the majority of the VC funds are from the financial institutions and high net worth individuals. In China, in addition to these two components, you will see a large resource coming from the government. Also in China, the startups are usually valuated higher than the US startups. And then the VCs in China usually have stricter terms compared with the VCs terms in the US. They put the founders in personal liability if there's any legal issues. And also the term is relatively shorter. In the US, the average, I think, is 7 to 10 years, but in China, Chinese VCs is less patient. They will expect to have, exit between 5 to 7 years. The behavior is also different. So Chinese VC usually set very clear KPI and a very strict KPI for the startup to achieve at each stage. And the Chinese VCs usually prefer startups to be incubated in China. So I think that's something which is quite challenging for Australian business who are looking to raise money in China. Because Chinese VCs, they are not interested in small deals. And if they will question why do you need to raise $1 million in China rather than do it in Australia, unless your technology or products is really can gain great traction in the local market. So if you are looking to raise money in China, I would suggest that you do it in Australia first, or you find a Chinese partner, because your Chinese partner will fill the gap of local market knowledge, which is a crucial element the VCs will consider when they evaluate your projects. Key sectors in China. So these are the key sectors set by the Chinese government. China has a strategy called Made in 2025, which they aim to put lots of resources to develop these sectors. But for Australian companies, what are the opportunities? Personally, I think these are things which are sectors which Australian companies will have opportunities: renewable energy, new material, healthcare, electric vehicle, sports tech, e-commerce and mobile payment, digital game, and intelligent manufacturing. And we did have some successful story about Australian business in those sectors, access China market successfully, and had very good traction. This slide is just sharing about how Chinese internet users spend their time across all different apps. So you will see that 33% of them spend 33% of the time they spend are in the social media platforms. And the next large one is online video, short video platforms. As you know, Douyin, which is a ByteDance company, is becoming the second largest unicorn in China. And they have replaced Baidu as a top 3 giant companies in China. And one of the story I can share with you is that one of the companies coming to our landing pad program, they were in the beef industry. So when I first looked at their application, I really doubted, what's this beef exporter doing in the landing pad program. And after I talked to them, I understand that they have been doing like 12 months market research about the market, how Chinese consumers spend their money. And then they decided to utilize social media platform as their entry market strategy to promote their brand. So what they did is that they shooted a short video about one of the founders teaching Chinese people how to cook steak. And the video was shot under the blue sky on the beach. And he updated that video in Douyin. And that just go widely. And for that single video, he got more than 100,000 likes. And that video cost 0 money. So what they did is that they also embedded a link in that video to their online e-commerce store, and that generates tractions directly. So I think that's just a good example that how they studied the Chinese consumer behavior and utilize the social media platform to promote their product. These are just some factors and the trends how Chinese consumer behaves lately. So as you know that Tmall is one of the largest online shopping platform. This year's November 11, the single festival, they have sold 26 billion in one day. So I think you can see that how Chinese people really love online shopping. And if you are in B2C, and if you are in the consumer good products and you are looking to sell your products in China, then you cannot think about selling your stuff offline. E-commerce is a must thing for you. And previously, I think people has perception that consumers in tier 1 cities are rich. They have more buying power. But according to a report McKinsey did this year, it shows actually the young people, young generation in China are increasingly having purchasing power. So 50% of Chinese luxury goods are actually bought by the post-90s, and half of them are located in second tier and lower cities. So I think that's changed the perception of people who used to believe people in the big cities are the major consumers of those expensive luxury goods. Live streaming. Has anyone seen this video before? No? Okay. So this is last year's Double 11 festival. Well, Jack Ma and this guy called Austin, which is a KOL in China, they are selling lipsticks using live streaming. And then after 1 hour, can you just guess how many lipsticks Jack Ma sold? Huh? How many did you say? Jack Ma sold less than 20, and this guy sold thousands of lipsticks. Yeah, so this is a trend in China, how people use live streaming for e-commerce. But live streaming is not only used in e-commerce to sell goods, but also now is widely used in education, online game, entertainment, and sports. So this is just something really interesting. I don't buy stuff when watching live streaming. The only time I did is that I was trying to do some case studies, but it's really funny to see how people are engaged with the KOLs. If they are really into this KOL, they can buy gifts online, like virtual gifts to these KOLs. That's one of the way how they make money. And this guy make millions a year to be KOL. So I think he is now making even more money than some of the stars in China. Next one, if you are thinking about start a business in China, you should consider. First, do you have the right product and technology for China? If you have developed a product and technology in Australia and you are simply think to copy that to China, then 90% likely that you will be fail in the Chinese market because the market is very different. The consumer behavior is different. You can't just copy your Australian strategy to China. You need a Chinese market strategy if you are thinking to access and expand China. You don't necessarily need an entity to do business in China because I would suggest that you do some research and talk to your potential customers, understand the market before you rush into registering a business. Because nowadays, registering a business is pretty easy in China. You can do it within between 6 to 8 weeks. But you need to think about what kind of structure you want to set up. Do you want to set up a wholly owned enterprise, or you want to set up a JV, or just a rep office? Does your product technology involve any internet transactions? If you do, then you probably will need an ICP license. Then ICP license will not get approved if you are 100% owned by a foreigner. So those are the factors you need to consider before you start registering your business. And do you have an IP strategy to protect your technology and product for China? The patent and trademark you registered in other country, in Australia, will not protect you for the Chinese market. I think this is something you need to be aware of.
If we want to do all of those, like how much budget should we set to, like, to the IP, to the ISP license?
Mm-hmm. Well, for registration, it really depends. First, which agency you use. You can't just do it by yourself because it's just too complicated. Yes, if you don't need an ICP license, it can be done with a few thousand RMB. But if you need an ICP license, and also ICP is not the only license you need. If you are doing like trade, like international trade, you will need a special license. And if you are in a other particular sector, you may also need other licenses. So it really depends on which type of license you need. But if you are just registering a trade office or a consulting company, then it will cost you a few thousand RMB to do that through an agency. Yeah. Do you know your customers well enough? Do you know how your customer operate in each region? And do you have a strategy to expand your business in long term? I think that's all the questions you need to consider before you want to start a business in China. And Chinese government has a list of called prohibit list, where certain industry, certain products, certain technology are not allowed to do business in China, or some of the technology or some of the products you will have to have a Chinese partner. So you need to do your own study before you set up a business. Key challenges for Australian startups. As I mentioned earlier, market is too big. Also, pace in China in the startup ecosystem is fast compared with Australia. You all should have heard about 996. In all the internet companies, people work overtime. That's just a common thing. So if you are really thinking about getting a win in China, you can't operate Australian hours. We used to have an Australian startup coming to the landing pad, and then we take them to do a pitch to investor. On one page of their pitch deck, they said their customer support hours is from Monday to Friday, and from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. This will not work in China. In China, people expect 24 hours support. Sorry. How do I go back? Yes. Policy is also different. So you need to understand a little bit the policy of each government. That's also a complicated thing with China. China is a very top-down system. The central government usually set up a very high-level policy. Then each of the provincial city government will issue a detailed implementation plan. So you need to figure out the government policy in each city so that you can get benefit from them. Because China, the central government is encouraging entrepreneurship. So almost each of the provincial government and the city government have different incentives to attract foreign business, foreign startups to settle down in their city. So It's better that you figure out what you can get from the government before you register your business in that location. Finding right partner is also crucial. When I say partner, it doesn't necessarily mean your customer, your potential partner to start the business, but also who you hire, your staff. And I think for Australian companies, in Australia, you have lots of Chinese students studying in Australia. I think they are probably a good channel for you to source people who understand both Australia and China and can help you to do business in China. Work style is also different. So in China, people use WeChat for everything. And you will receive like WeChat message even at 10 p.m. Every day. So that's just a Euro thing. If you get that message from your business partners, just don't be surprised or don't get annoyed. That's all I want to share. And then about the Landing Pad program, it's set up by the Australian federal government to support Australian-founded market-ready startups and scale-ups to explore overseas market. We have 5, and I'm the manager of Landing Pad in Shanghai. I help Australian business to explore opportunities in Greater China, not only Shanghai. We have a physical space in Shanghai, but space is the least important thing for you. The insights and the connection Austrade can provide is the most valuable thing for Australian business in China. These are just some case study for Australian startup in the Landing Pad program. How do they get attractions? Latitude 28, I just mentioned they are the beef guys and got really good outcome in China. And Alitic is a South Australian-based company doing like intelligent manufacturing system to help manufacturing companies save costs, improve their production efficiency. They got really good outcome. They set up they were in the Landing Pad program April this year, and now they set up an office in China and already hired 6 local people. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I have talked more than I expected. Questions?
Questions from anybody?
No question? Okay. Oh, sorry, yeah.
So with the Landing Pad program, is this a continuous event, or is this there's going to be a registration where only a certain amount of companies can go on the program?
Yes, so we only have limited space and resources. For each batch, we accept up to 6 companies. Yeah, and then we used to run a cohort base, but now we are more flexible to accommodate the startup's schedule, because in Australia you have Christmas, which you lost a month, and then after your Christmas, then we start Chinese New Year, then you lost another month. So we are now, we don't have a straight, cohort schedule now. We are providing more flexibility to suit your schedule. Yeah.
It's a very generic question. What's the minimum investment required to do a startup in China?
Minimum investment in China? It's a hard question because it depends on where you want to start your business. You don't have to spend lots of money if you are trying to start up. There are lots of like incubators, accelerators. You can utilize the resource before you make big investment. And in some of the local government in China, they even provide free accommodation. If they assessed you are qualified for the scope of a business they want to attract. And some of the government are even willing to provide you allowance to hire staff. So, for example, Nanjing government, which we have quite good relationship with, and we are in process of helping one of the landing pad company to gain some support from the government. They are willing to provide support to all the Australian companies who are who have been through the landing pad program, 6 months accommodation, and then match the investment, which means if you got investment somewhere else, not necessarily in China, they are willing to follow on the investment without taking any equity. They are also providing some allowances for hiring staff and workspace, free workspace. Yeah. I think you will need to cover your living cost. That's a start. You don't necessarily have to hire staff if you are just starting the business. So I think that's a minimum investment for you to go to China and to test in the market.
When you say minimum, living expenses is the only expenses we need to bear.
I would say so for the first short period of time, if your purpose is to access the market first and to learn the market before you register an entity in China, then that would be the cost you need to bear. And some other costs like travel, meeting with the clients, meals, all this kind of thing, yeah.
But also remember, Austrade also gives you back basically half of that.
Yeah. Yes, we have EMDG program where you can claim back some of your expenses over that period. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any sources for market research? Any sources for market research in China?
Agencies?
Agencies or any portal through which we can get some support to do market research over there?
So which business are you in?
I'm not yet started it,
Okay.
but I'm thinking of e-commerce for a
Okay.
based product.
Yeah, there are quite a number of marketing agencies in China. One of them is we are familiar with. I'm not promoting. Okay, as a government, we can't just promote one company, but the one we know who is very experienced is China Skinny. You can check their website. They have free newsletters providing some updates and insights. I think that's a good way for you to get a bit of an understanding of market. And if you want to know how to utilize WeChat to do business, how to promote your product through WeChat, there's a WeChat public account called Walk the Chat. They provide very good insights about about e-commerce and how to use WeChat for your business.
Recently produced an e-commerce guide that actually provides some market insights into e-commerce spaces in China, along with multiple countries, so we can check out.
Yeah, just check out our website.
Emily, so first, thank you so much for sharing the information with the group, and we appreciate that. And we are kind of a VC focused on the deep technology. So my question probably is around for Australian landing pads. Do you guys partner with some venture capital to bring the Australian technology into China, or yeah?
So we do have connections with VCs and the corporates. We introduce VCs, corporate VCs to startups. But before we do so, we need to make sure the startup is ready, is in the right portfolio of the VCs. Because we don't want to, harm the relationship and keep sending, startups to the VCs. And also, what we are doing in China is that we are trying to partner with different organizations, because as a government, you can't do everything by your own. So what we have done in the past 12 months is that we are establishing a relationship with some of the big organizations. We recently signed an MOU with an organization called iCampus. iCampus is an innovation platform established by AstraZeneca and the Wuxi government. So AstraZeneca is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, and they have they are probably one of the biggest foreign companies in China as well. So they will put some resources and funding into that platform, and we will be introducing some Australian digital health medtech companies to them. They will help the companies for market entry, and also provide mentorship and guidance about how to navigate the market. We also have a relationship with some of the VCs, but each VCs has their own vertical. Yeah. So we will evaluate first before we make introduction. Yeah.
We actually we are partners. So we actually have already landed. We're in the process of contracting period. We have our solid contacts. So I just want to know that as Australia a venture capital deep tech fund, and what Australia, how many has already landed in China? That's one. Two, what support Australia would give. So this is my question.
Okay. First question. The Shanghai Landing Pad started first a batch of Australian companies in 2017. And so far we had 23 companies through the program. 7 have already set up their Chinese presence. And some have gone back to Australia. Before the event, I spoke to Jerry Chang from Zoom Connect, who was in the program, and he spent 7 weeks in the Landing Pad program, and we introduced contacts, investors to them after experience all these activities. He finally made decision that China is too difficult for him, and that Korea is his priority market because that's where his revenue come now. I think that's actually a win for him and for the program as well, because objective of the program is not based on performance of the program is not based on KPI of how many people settled. Our objective is to help Australian companies to navigate the market. You may find China is a good market for you, and you may find China is too difficult for you, so that you don't need to spend energy and the market and the time for this market. You may think about to expand other market. Yeah. And also, another thing I want to mention is that we also do boot camps. The boot camps is a relatively short program, usually 5 days, and so far we have had about 50-something companies through that boot camp. The boot camps is more suitable for companies who have less understanding about China market, but really want to know, get a bit of first understanding about the market. So in the boot camp, we will arrange a few workshops, including IP protection, WeChat, how to pitch to Chinese investors and customers, those kind of workshops to help them to get ready and understand the market. And then we will also arrange a few company visits to either their potential customers or partners. And usually these boot camps are also combined with big conference in China. China Joy, for example, usually are organized in August every year. And then the recent 2 years, we have been bringing Australian digital game companies to China. And this year, we set up meeting between Tencent and the Australian digital game companies, which got really traction. And then Tencent then come back to Australia, and they are now in discussion with one of the company for potential investment. So I think that's some of the outcome we had. And the bootcamp is more industry specific. We have done digital games, we have done ag tech, we have done med tech so far. Yeah. Another question about Austrade support. Yeah, we have a financial service team which is specialized in this area. So you can, if you are looking to expand in China, then I suggest you contact our financial service team, who can provide support.
Sure. Would you be able to make introduction?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Tencent, obviously, they made their, a great move on the game industry. I've got one more question.
Yep.
According to the current geopolitical tension between, in the region and especially between Australia and China, I actually just had a 4 hours meeting with one of the big four today, with a business which is an inbound business which we had no intention to take on, in the first place. But one of their senior partners actually, they said, we hate, he used these words, we hate Chinese investors. And I was like, well, it's a very strong word. And we do know, you covered the difference between the culture. And I mean, the culture difference can never be overcome. So this is why we are here, and the people here, trying to make the difference. Is there any, according to the tension, recent tension, have you found, there are less Australia companies actually apply to the landing pad, or, they actually, the numbers reduced or actually stay the same, or what's your view about the trends?
I'm not in a position to comment on political things, but from my own observation, the relationship between Australia and China goes up and down, and it doesn't really impact too much on the business aspect from where I'm standing. So we still get similar number of applications, Australian startups, for the landing pad program. I think one of the reasons is because companies who are applying that program are those who already got a bit of an understanding about Chinese market. So they know, they already have previous interaction and engagement with Chinese company. So I think they will put their business as a first priority. Investment size, I do notice that the Chinese investors going out doing investment overseas has been reducing, especially in the US, it has been significantly reduced. And also VCs deals in China this year also reduced. That's because the VCs are now exercising more cautious. They don't want to invest any, U.S. startups which will eventually breach any regulatory things. That's why. But I did talk to some investors recently. Their view is that they see this sort of downturn is a short-term thing because they believe the Chinese economy is and consumers is resilient enough to overcome, this period. We just don't know how long it will last. And from Chinese government, they are now focusing more on the domestic market and also looking to investing in deals in other countries in Europe. We actually this year, we got more inquiries from the Chinese investors asking for Australian technologies because they can't invest in the US. So my own opinion is that you do have people have different perspective, but from the stories that Australian companies who did have good traction in China, you can tell that there are still things going on, good things going on between the two markets. Yeah.
Thanks for your confirmation. This is actually that's my observation as well. I mean, China's, no doubt it's the regional superpower. No one can deny that. And I just don't, I actually have a meeting tomorrow, which I was asked to give a speech about the question. They questioned on this. They said Australia is very reluctant to doing business with China. I said, well, if the market is big enough here to sustain your business, stay here. But if you want to, there's always risk if you want to go to other regions. I mean, if you don't have, really good deep tech or confident about you can. I mean, if you can't afford to take the risk, then don't do it. This is what I would like to share with the Australia business tomorrow.
Yeah, I think some of the Australian business, their product and market are made for Chinese market. So they have to go to China. They have to scale their business in China. Well, for others, they may choose to go to US, then, which is understandable under the current situation. It's just too many things going on, on the news and the lots of things happening. But for those companies who are determined to come to China, I don't think it will impact on their plan to access the market. Yeah.
Might have time for one more question if anybody has any more. No more? Oh, Terry.
Not a question. I just want to do an advertisement. Next Monday evening, at the moment we have a Chinese VC from Shanghai called Jia Ju. She is resident here and she has invested over $120 million in Chinese startups. And she, including the hottest cybersecurity startup in China, and she's resident here and she's talking here on Monday night. And if you'd like to come along and listen to her and about her philosophy of investing and stuff, absolutely consistent with what Emily said tonight. But Jia is a pretty extraordinary woman, and to have raised and invested 120 million Australian dollars in China in the last couple of years is pretty amazing.
I wish I could stay on Monday. All right, thank you for your time, and yeah.